Hey guys, it's Gavin and I've been working on more film stuff. In fact, I just finished the Filmist 1.8 update. Pero hasta ahí nomás, fueron unos cuantos besos, 2 o 3 caricias, me ganó el deseo de que fueras mía. They're mad at me, they're angry with me. Cálmate, cálmate. ¿Estás bien? Those shadows. I actually did updates on the classic Chrome-like and the classic neg-like presets and Capture One styles to the 1.8 Gen 2 versions of these, and they are so accurate and they nail it. I'll put a link to that post in the comments. But coming back to the classic film looks, I redid with Gen 2 the Ektar 100. Ektar is this great film. It's one of the few films you can actually still get, and if you're shooting with film, I recommend you shoot with it. Ektar's always been in Filmist, but Gen 2, we went back. I went back to the drawing board and said, okay, we're going to study Ektar way deeper. We're going to make a Gen 2 like we did with the Portrait presets to really bring in all the nuance of this film to our digital edits, and I think you guys are going to like the results. Let's talk about it. Ektar is this great fine-grained film. Originally, it actually came in an 800, a 50, and a 100, but the 100 is the only one that actually still exists. I've shot a fair bit of Ektar, particularly on my 4x5, and it's a beautiful film. A lot of times people think, oh, it's good for streets and for landscapes, but not so much for portraits because it kind of has this red tone. But if you dig into Ektar and if it's processed right, it can actually be gorgeous for portraits too. When I do an update to Filmist and it's like, hey, there's 3 new presets, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot because there's so many hours that goes into refining a film preset. And in particular, the Gen 2 film presets that I make are hyper refined and hyper studied. So like last year, we went back and we took Portrait and made Portrait Gen 2 and then Natura 1600 Gen 2, and those became these super, really useful films that you're just gonna come back to again and again. In fact, you can download not only the classic Neg Gen 2, but also the Portrait 160 Gen 2, one of the Portrait presets in my Filmist free pack, and I'll put a link to that. Ektar 100 has this very subtle nuance. And so when I started studying it, going to work, looking at different people's blogs, looking at my own results, looking at videos, talking about how people used Ektar 100, and then I started going in, and when you make a film preset, you have to really refine a lot. It's not the same as just doing an effect and saying, oh, I'm gonna turn saturation down, I'm gonna adjust my highlights. You have to really micro adjust the hue and saturation, the advanced color in Capture One, and the nuances of it, because what you're trying to do is take that and then you gotta combine it with curves and tones to get just the right hint, the way that shadows manage colors, the way that the reds come through in Ektar is tricky. In fact, even for film shooters, it's considered a little bit tricky because if you're shooting portraits or something like that, you can go too far with those reds and it can feel a little bit weird. But when you nail Ektar, when it's developed right, or in this case, when it's developed right as a preset, as a style, it comes through in everything. So you get these rich, deep colors, these blues, these reds, if you're shooting streets or if you're shooting landscapes. But then if you're shooting portraits, you get these great flesh tones. Really takes an inspiration of a inspired color mix, a look based on that film. And if you can shoot Ektar film, if you're going out film shooting, get some Ektar 100 and develop it, and you'll see that it comes out a little bit different depending on how it's developed and the conditions you shoot. I think it's a very nuanced and creative film. Okay, so let's put it to work. Let's actually go back. We're gonna take some of these images, whether they're streets, whether they're people, and I want you guys to see how much we can actually do with this Ektar. If you remember photo magazines from the 90s, it was all about this really fine grain, this detail. We've tried to capture everything in the Ektar 100 of Filmist 1.8, and the Gen 2 look is really, really good. If you put this to work on portraits, on landscapes, on the streets, it's really not gonna matter what you're shooting because the color has been dialed in to really reflect that ideal Ektar 100 look. I also actually did a blog post on the other presets from 1.8 in Filmist, the new classic Neg like Gen 2, the classic Chrome like Gen 2. I'll put a link to that in the comments as well. And you can actually download my classic Neg Gen 2, as well as one of the portrait presets in the Filmist free pack. You'll find this Ektar 100 sim in the Filmist Complete. Filmist, more than any other preset pack, is all about study and research and understanding color and what pleases our eyes and what really reflects those films. Whether we're taking, you know, a photo of the Red's Volkswagen Beetle on the street, or whether we're doing a portrait, run it. It's a very versatile film. So don't think, oh, I can only use this for landscapes. It does this kind of magic with portraits, and you can see how it kind of brings in this complexity to it. Don't be afraid just to expose up a third of a stop or something like that. Even if you expose correctly, sometimes when you process, you're shifting curves and other things, and there's a lot of curve nuances and things like that in these Filmist films, particularly in the Gen 2s. So don't be afraid to play with those a little bit and just move it around a little bit. Play with the white balance if you need to, all of that kind of stuff, because it's going to give you better results. I think this Ektar 100 takes that inspiration. It really honors the original Ektar film, which I hope you'll go out and shoot some of that as well, and you'll see what I'm talking about is if you go out and shoot, how depending on how it's processed and the conditions, it can come out very different. But yes, you can shoot portraits with Ektar, you can shoot landscapes, you can shoot streets with Ektar. With the preset versions, you can use them anywhere, and they fit into your workflow so much better than just using an in-camera profile, in my opinion. Even when I'm shooting with my Fujis, I don't use a baked-in JPEG. I don't use the baked-in profile. I go to the preset. And that way, if I'm out here and I'm shooting with the Sony, like I'm filming on this right now, I can take the same profiles, the same Ektar, the same classic looks, and apply those, and they're gonna look great. I can also do them as a LUT because there's LUTs, video LUTs of all the films. Go to the seimfx.com/filmist and download the free pack. I'd try it out as well, because once you start editing with film, it doesn't mean the other tools, the nuances, the actions, and the other things you do are irrelevant. I still use Silver, I still use Belladonna, I still use PowerFlow. But once you start editing digital with film, it does really open your eyes to the subtlety and the nuance in your shadow hunting and in your processing. Everything doesn't have to be pushed hard. It can just be done subtly and look really good. Okay guys, we'll see you next time. Hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Es un más muy bonito, amigo. Pero hasta ahí no más. Fueron unos cuantos besos, 2 o 3 caricias, me ganó el